Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'd like to share with you my opinion on the best AoE classes in Lost Ark. I know many of you are curious to find this out, and I believe that it's because you guys that ask are coming from games like Diablo and Path of Exile maybe, which are all about AoE and like the fastest thing around. Now Lost Ark is a little bit different. AoE matters, but not that much as in those other games. However, in today's video I will tell you which classes I think are the best AoE classes in the game. From the get-go, I want to say a huge thank you to those of you who are supporting me here on YouTube with the paid membership. My pirates, I love you guys and I'm really thankful to you. Also, towards the end of the video I'd like to tell you which classes are, in my opinion, the worst in terms of AoE damage. Now you have to remember one thing, and that is the fact that in Lost Ark every single class has AoE skills. Every single class has really powerful AoE skills that can be a glyph towards more damage on AoE skills or more damage on regular mobs, etc. Even a bard, a holy knight, an arcana, all of these classes can do AoE damage. A battle master, for God's sake. However, there are some classes in the game that are well known for their AoE damage. It is larger, it is more powerful, they have more options in their traits to customize these skills for even more or better or faster AoE damage. It's not only if you have these skills that are a circle on the ground and many mobs get lifted up in the sky while you cast them, it's also how often do you get to cast them? Is it your purpose to cast them? Do you have your stats and gear spec'd in such a way in which you actually do damage, and as opposed to maybe supporting or being a more survivable tank or something like that. So this is why some classes, in my opinion, in Lost Ark do a lot better, or appear to do a lot better in terms of AoE damage than others. At number 1, 2 and 3, I could not even tell them apart, to be honest with you. It's the Destroyer, the Berserker and the Blaster. Simple as that. It's not in that order because I really don't know which one can do better AoE, more AoE or cooler AoE. I guess it depends on the player, on the ping, on everything else, on your team comp, but these three classes are at the top of the food chain in terms of AoE in Lost Ark. Destroyers, as you know, they are absolute beasts. They do a lot of damage, and most of that damage is AoE damage. If me personally, I'm in a dungeon and I see I have 1 or 2 destroyers, the more destroyers the better, because they're survivable, they can be frontline, and they have a lot of AoE. So dungeon clears go so fast with a destroyer. Now berserkers also come in very close to the destroyers because they also have a lot of AoE skills. Many berserker players, you see them in videos on YouTube, etc., and you don't see that many AoE skills that they can possibly have in their skill build, because they spec with specific skills for raiding, which raiding is just one boss, and classes that have AoE doesn't really mean that they shine more than classes that don't, simply because it's a one-to-one kind of fight and AoE doesn't really matter, except in a couple of raids in which there's ads or something like that, but it's very little to insignificant amounts in raiding. Now berserkers also do a lot of AoE damage, and they have a lot of skills that they can use if they just do dungeons and they want to be amazing at AoEing. Blaster is also in the middle of these two with fantastic AoE. Blaster also has the innate skill that has even more AoE, and that innate skill, I don't even want to talk about the fact if you when you added a seal book in which every kill with skills from the innate skill, the 2 red skills, which are very powerful AoE skills, reset the cooldown from your 2 red skills. So it's absolutely amazing in terms of AoE damage. Blaster has a lot of skills that are also viable, as in they use it in raiding as well, that is AoE. On top of that, these classes that I've just talked about have traits within their skills, these AoE skills, that make them even better. For the more mobs there are inside your AoE, the more damage you do to them, kind of thing. Blaster is a class that also has access to these kinds of skills, and it's a joy, an absolute joy to play a Blaster with an AoE build, not a raiding build. inside the dungeons. At number 4, 5, and may I just include 6 as well, again 3 classes that I couldn't really tell them apart from each other. However, they are slightly lower in terms of AoE damage than the previous 3, are the Summoner, the Scouter, and I would like to include the Demonic here also, because I believe all of these 3 classes have the potential to do very good in terms of AoE damage. Summoners, they have a lot of skills AoE, however it's a little bit more, let's say, more challenging to cast them right at the right time, because you're kind of squishy and you kind of need to kite, and your AoEs don't always gather all of the mobs inside them. You have some that don't, and then, you know, not all mobs get CC'd, and then you're in trouble if you pull the 1000. Scouter, again, a class that is new, fresh, and has access to quite a nice amount of AoE, especially when they go inside their innate skill, which, by the way, in dungeons and open world content, etc., can be actually spammed, and their skills can be glyphed in such a way in which you get faster inside your innate skill when you become a Superman or Iron Man. Inside there's like a lot of very powerful AoE, and it's a really cool class to play. Also requires some micro, again, as I compared Summoner being a bit more squishy, a bit more weird to cast your AoEs. The same with Scouter. The class is a little bit squishier than the first 3, and also it requires a little bit of micro for your gadget, so you can actually cast everything with it and gather all the mobs, etc. So because of that, it's in let's say the second tier of AoE classes. The Demonic, as I mentioned, a class that's super cool to play, very visually satisfying, and has access to quite a nice amount of AoE that he can actually cast. It's part of his rotation of their builds, and yeah, quite strong AoE as well, very good for dungeons or open world also. I would like to mention at the end of the video, as I promised, classes that kind of suck in terms of AoE, suck compared to the ones I just talked about, not in general in game. As I said, every class has AoE, right? Battle Masters, for example, is something that comes to mind as a class that doesn't really have AoE. Yeah, they can have, but then again, is it really that viable, right? Battle Masters obviously are a very mobile class, a very squishy class. They do good in raiding if you play well, if you're fast, because you can always be at the back of the boss with your mobility, and you have very nice single target attacks. But in terms of AoE damage, really haven't really ever seen a Battle Master assigned on mob control in some sort of content. So yeah, this is one class. Another class that comes to mind is Soul Master, for example, which again, they still have AoE skills and everything they do is AoE, but it's in a very short range, and it feels more like a one-to-one thing. It's very powerful when there's not 25 mobs there, but just 5 instead. They're not wide also, and even though they do have one that's wide, it's just one compared to a Berserker, Blaster, Destroyer that have 8 out of 8 skills, all of them in a big radius AoE. So this is, in my opinion, the difference in between classes. Not to say that the ones that are not in my top 6 cannot finish content. Of course they can easily be carried by a Destroyer in any form of content. I'm joking, of course, everyone can finish it and everyone can do really good. Raiding is still the most important part in Lost Ark, Guardian Subjugations as they call them. Doing dungeons is a very trivial experience, and yeah, AoE, having AoE or choosing a class because it has AoE is not really that important in the grand scheme of Lost Ark as things stand right now. Yeah, of course, having 1 or 2 classes in a party for dungeons, and how it used to be back in the day for the cube, that do good in AoE content is a huge asset. However, with season 2 right now, there are dungeons, there are many mobs, but there's also very many people who play these classes that are very good at AoEing. I wish you guys lots of love. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm gonna see you really soon. Stay safe, take care.